The small ship fell through the atmosphere like a dying star. Lisa Kane gripped the control stick with both hands as warning lights flashed red across every surface of the cockpit. The pirates had done their work well. Her exploration vessel was finished, and she knew it. Smoke filled the cabin as sparks flew from damaged circuits. The ship shook violently as it hit the upper air of the planet below. Lisa had picked this world at random from her navigation charts when the pirates attacked 3 days ago. She knew nothing about it except that it showed signs of human settlement. The ground rushed up fast. Lisa pulled back on the controls and felt nothing happen. The ship was not listening anymore. Trees and fields spread out below her like a green blanket. She saw buildings in the distance, but they were too far away. The ship was going down here whether she liked it or not. The impact threw her forward against her restraints. Metal screamed and tore around her. The world spun and crashed and finally went quiet. Lisa hung upside down in her pilot seat, breathing hard. Blood ran down her face from a cut on her forehead. Her left arm felt wrong when she tried to move. She released her restraints and fell to what used to be the ceiling. Every movement hurt, but she was alive. The ship was not. Looking around at the twisted wreckage, she knew this vessel would never fly again. Her life support systems were dead. Her communication array was destroyed. She was alone on an unknown world with whatever supplies she could carry. Lisa found her emergency pack and checked the contents. 3 days of food and water, a basic medical kit, a small plasma cutter that might work for a few hours. Not much, but it would have to do. She bandaged her head wound and made a sling for her damaged arm. Then she climbed out through a crack in the hull. The planet smelled like Earth, clean air with hints of growing things and distant rain. Rolling hills covered in grass stretched away in all directions. In the far distance, she could see what looked like buildings or structures. That was where she needed to go. Lisa began walking. The grass was soft under her feet and the air was warm. 2 suns hung in the sky, giving everything a golden light. It would have been beautiful if she was not so desperate. Her water would last 3 days if she was careful. After that, she would need to find help or die trying. The first day passed slowly. Her injured arm throbbed with each step, but she kept moving. When night came, she found shelter under a large tree and tried to rest. The planet had 3 moons, and they gave enough light to see by. Strange sounds came from the darkness, but nothing bothered her. On the second day, Lisa found a stream. The water tasted clean and she refilled her bottles. Her food was half gone already. The buildings she had seen from the crash site seemed no closer than before. Hills and valleys hid them from view most of the time. She began to worry that she had misjudged the distance. By the 3rd day, Lisa was struggling. Her injured arm was getting worse and she was dizzy from lack of food. The emergency rations were finished. She had found some berries growing on bushes but was afraid to eat them. On an unknown world, they might be poison. Late in the afternoon, she climbed a tall hill and saw them. Buildings spread out in a valley below her. Not just houses, but large structures that looked like barns or warehouses. Fields of crops stretched between them in neat rows. Fences marked boundaries and paths connected everything together. It was a working farm or ranch of some kind. Lisa stumbled down the hill toward the settlement. Her legs felt weak and her vision kept blurring. She had to stop several times to rest. The buildings seemed to grow larger as she got closer. This was a big operation with dozens of structures and what looked like hundreds of acres under cultivation. She was still half a mile away when she collapsed. The world spun around her and went dark. When she woke up, the suns were setting and voices were talking nearby. Lisa tried to sit up, but hands pressed her back down. "Easy there. You took quite a fall." The voice belonged to a man. He sounded kind but cautious. "Where did you come from wandering out here in the middle of nowhere?" Lisa opened her eyes and saw 3 people standing over her. 2 men in work clothes and a woman wearing a simple dress. They looked human, which was a relief. Their faces showed concern but also suspicion. "My ship crashed," Lisa managed to say. Her voice came out as a whisper. 3 days ago in the hills. I have been walking since then." The woman knelt down beside her. "You look half dead from hunger and thirst." Can you stand up if we help you? With their support, Lisa got to her feet. The world swayed, but she stayed upright. One of the men gestured toward the buildings in the distance. That is Stone Creek Ranch, he said. The Morrison family owns it. They might have work for someone willing to earn their keep. Are you running from something or someone? Lisa shook her head. Just bad luck and worse timing. I will work for food and shelter if they will have me. The three ranch hands looked at each other. Finally, the woman nodded. We will take you to the main house. Peter Morrison is fair, but he does not like surprises. You will need to convince him you are worth the risk. They helped Lisa walk the remaining distance to the ranch. The buildings were even larger than they had appeared from the hill. Barns and storage facilities surrounded a large house built from local stone. Equipment and vehicles sat parked in neat rows. Everything looked prosperous and well-maintained. As they approached the main house, Lisa wondered what she would tell these people. The truth about being a deep space explorer would probably sound crazy to simple farmers. She would need a believable story about who she was and how she had ended up on their world. Her survival depended on making them trust her. The ranch hands led her up to the front door of the stone house. Through the windows, she could see warm lights and people moving around inside. It looked like home and safety and everything she needed. Lisa took a deep breath and prepared to meet the Morrison family. Her new life was about to begin. Peter Morrison stood in his doorway looking down at the stranger his ranch hands had brought him. The woman was clearly in bad shape with a bandaged head and her arm in a makeshift sling. Dirt and exhaustion marked her face, but her eyes were alert and intelligent. Found her collapsed about half a mile out, said Jake, one of his senior hands. Says her ship crashed in the hills 3 days back. Been walking since then with no food or water. Peter studied the woman carefully. She was not dressed like the usual drifters who sometimes wandered onto his property looking for work. Her clothes were strange and made from materials he did not recognize. There was something about her that suggested education and training. What kind of ship? Peter asked. We did not hear any crash or see any smoke. Lisa looked up at him with tired eyes. Small trading vessel. I was carrying supplies between the outer settlements when raiders hit me. The ship broke apart when it went down. Nothing left worth salvaging. Helen Morrison appeared beside her husband, wiping her hands on a kitchen towel. She took one look at the injured woman, and her expression softened. Peter, she needs medical attention and food. We can ask questions later. Helen is right, Peter said after a moment. Come inside, we will get you cleaned up and fed. Then we can talk about what happens next. They helped Lisa into the house and sat her down at a large wooden table in the kitchen. Helen brought water and clean bandages while Peter examined her injuries. The head wound was not serious, but her arm was badly bruised and might be cracked. You are lucky nothing is broken, Peter said as he wrapped her arm properly. This will heal, but you need to rest it for a few days. Helen set a bowl of hot soup and fresh bread in front of Lisa. The smell made her stomach growl loudly. She ate slowly, trying not to appear desperate, but the food disappeared quickly. Helen refilled the bowl without being asked. Thank you, Lisa said when she finally felt full. I was not sure I would make it to your ranch. You probably saved my life. Peter leaned back in his chair and studied her again. What is your name and where exactly did you come from? The nearest settlement is 200 miles from here. Lisa had prepared for this question during the walk to the house. My name is Lisa Kane. I was trading between the mining colonies and the asteroid belt when pirates attacked my convoy. My ship was damaged and I barely escaped. When I tried to land for repairs, your world was the closest safe harbor. It was mostly true except for the part about being a traitor. Peter seemed to accept the explanation, but Helen looked suspicious. You do not talk like a traitor, Helen said quietly. Your education shows in every word. What were you before you started hauling cargo between asteroids? Lisa hesitated. These people were offering her shelter, but they deserved honesty. At least some of it. I used to work for the government. Research and exploration mostly. When that job ended, I needed something else to pay the bills. Peter nodded slowly. Government work explains the education. It also explains why you might not want to talk about the details. We respect privacy here as long as you cause no trouble. I will earn my keep, Lisa promised. I can work despite the injured arm. I know my way around equipment and machinery. We'll see about that, Peter said. For now you need rest. Helen will show you to the guest room. Tomorrow we can discuss what kind of work you might be able to do. Helen led Lisa through the house to a small but comfortable bedroom. Clean sheets and warm blankets covered the bed. A window looked out over the ranch buildings and fields beyond. After 3 days of sleeping on the ground, it looked like paradise. There are clean clothes in the dresser, Helen said. They belong to my sister who visited last year. She is about your size. Get some sleep and we will talk more in the morning. Lisa thanked her and closed the door. She cleaned herself up using water from a basin and changed into the borrowed clothes. They fit well enough and felt wonderful after days in her damaged flight suit. When she finally lay down on the soft bed, her body seemed to melt into the mattress. She woke to sunlight streaming through the window and the sound of voices outside. Her arm felt better, and the headache was gone. Looking out the window, she could see the ranch in full daylight for the first time. It was even larger than she had thought, with fields stretching to the horizon. Helen had breakfast waiting when Lisa came to the kitchen. Peter was already gone, but he had left instructions for her to rest another day before starting any work. Lisa spent the morning walking around the ranch buildings, getting a feel for the operation. Stone Creek Ranch raised livestock and grew several types of grain crops. The equipment was sophisticated, but not as advanced as what Lisa was used to seeing on Core Worlds. These people were successful, but they were not wealthy by galactic standards. In the afternoon, Peter returned and found Lisa examining a broken piece of farming equipment behind one of the barns. She had removed several panels and was studying the internal mechanisms. That harvester has been giving us trouble for weeks, Peter said. The local repair shop wants more money than the machine is worth to fix it. Lisa looked up from her work. The main power coupling is cracked and the control circuits are corroded. Both problems are fixable with the right parts and tools. Peter raised an eyebrow. You know agricultural equipment. Machinery is machinery, Lisa replied. The principles are the same whether you are fixing a harvester or a starship engine. She caught herself too late. Peter noticed the slip, but said nothing. Lisa spent the rest of the afternoon working on the harvester using tools from the ranch workshop. By evening, she had it running better than it had in months. Word of the repair spread quickly among the ranch hands. By the next morning, several of them had brought her broken equipment to examine. Lisa found herself becoming the unofficial ranch mechanic almost by accident. Peter watched her work with growing interest. This woman was clearly more than she claimed to be. Her knowledge and skills went far beyond what any trader would need. But she was also proving valuable to the ranch and caused no trouble. After a week, Peter offered her permanent employment, room and board plus a small salary in exchange for keeping our equipment running. You can stay as long as you like or until you find passage off-world. Lisa accepted gratefully. She had nowhere else to go, and these people had been kind to her. The work was satisfying, and the ranch felt peaceful after years of traveling between the stars. For the first time in a long while, she felt like she might be home. Lisa settled into ranch life more easily than she had expected. Her days began before sunrise, helping with the morning chores, and ended after sunset when the last piece of equipment was put away. The work was physical and demanding, but she found it satisfying in ways her old job had never been. The ranch hands accepted her quickly once they saw what she could do with broken machinery. Equipment that had been limping along for months suddenly ran like new under her care. Peter stopped, questioning her background, and started relying on her expertise. That woman has magic fingers when it comes to fixing things, she overheard Jake telling another worker. Yesterday she got the old irrigation pump working again. We thought that thing was dead for sure. Lisa smiled at the comment. If they only knew that she had once repaired the engines of interstellar spacecraft, they would probably be even more impressed. But she kept those memories to herself and focused on the simple pleasure of making useful things work properly. The only member of the Morrison family who remained distant was 8-year-old Katie. The girl watched Lisa from a distance but never approached or spoke directly to her. Helen explained that Katie had been withdrawn since losing her mother 2 years earlier. She was so close to Mary, Helen said sadly. When the fever took her, Katie just shut down. She barely speaks to anyone anymore and spends most of her time alone. Lisa observed the child carefully over the following weeks. Katie was clearly intelligent and curious, but something held her back from engaging with the world around her. She reminded Lisa of herself at that age after her own parents had died in a transport accident. One afternoon, Lisa was working on a water pump near the main house when she noticed Katie sitting on the porch steps reading a book. The girl kept glancing in her direction but looked away whenever their eyes met. Lisa finished her work and walked over to where Katie sat. "What are you reading?" she asked gently. Katie held up the book without speaking. It was a simple story about animals on a farm. Lisa sat down on the steps beside her, leaving some distance between them. "I used to love books like that when I was your age," Lisa said. "There is something nice about stories where everything works out in the end." Katie looked at her sideways, but still said nothing. Lisa did not push for conversation. She simply sat quietly enjoying the afternoon sunshine. After a few minutes, Katie went back to reading, but she did not move away. This became their routine over the following days. Lisa would find excuses to work near the house, and Katie would appear with a book or a puzzle. They shared the same space without talking much, but Lisa could feel the girl slowly relaxing around her. The breakthrough came during a thunderstorm that rolled across the ranch late one evening. Lisa was in the workshop checking on some equipment when she heard a soft knock at the door. Katie stood outside in her nightgown looking frightened. "The thunder woke me up," Katie said in a small voice. "Helen is visiting her sister in town and Peter is checking on the animals." Lisa opened the door wider. "Would you like to wait here until the storm passes? We can watch it through the window." Katie nodded and came inside. Lisa found a blanket and wrapped it around the girl's shoulders. They sat together on a bench watching lightning flash across the sky. The thunder was loud, but inside the workshop they felt safe and protected. "My mama used to hold me during storms," Katie said quietly. It was the most she had spoken to Lisa in weeks. "Storms can be scary," Lisa agreed, "but they are also beautiful in their own way. All that power and energy dancing across the sky." Katie leaned against her slightly. "Do you think my mama can see the lightning from heaven?" Lisa felt her throat tighten. "I think she can see everything you do, and I think she would be proud of how brave you are." They sat together until the storm passed and Peter returned to the house. He found them still in the workshop with Katie asleep against Lisa's shoulder. His expression was surprised but pleased. "She has not done that with anyone since Mary died," he whispered as he gently lifted his daughter. "Thank you." After that night, Katie began seeking Lisa out more often. She would bring her homework to the workshop and do it while Lisa worked. She asked questions about the equipment and listened carefully to the explanations. Lisa found herself looking forward to these visits more than she wanted to admit. "You are good with her," Helen observed one day. "Katie lights up when you are around. She has not been this happy in a long time." Lisa felt a warmth in her chest that had nothing to do with the afternoon sun. "She is a special child, very bright and thoughtful. She reminds me of someone else I know," Helen said with a smile. "You have more in common than you might think." As the weeks passed, Lisa began teaching Katie about the stars that filled the night sky over the ranch. They would sit outside after dinner, identifying constellations and talking about the vast distances between worlds. Lisa was careful not to reveal too much about her own travels, but she could share the wonder of space itself. "Are there really people living on other planets?" Katie asked one evening as they watched the 3 moons rise. "Oh yes," Lisa replied. "Humans have spread out among the stars to many different worlds. Each one is unique and beautiful in its own way." "Have you ever been to any of them?" Katie asked innocently. Lisa hesitated. "I have traveled more than most people, but this world is the most beautiful one I have ever seen." Katie smiled at that answer. "I am glad you came here even if your ship did crash. I like having you around." The simple statement hit Lisa harder than she expected. This child was becoming more important to her with each passing day. The thought of eventually leaving the ranch to find passage off-world was becoming less appealing, all the time. That night, Lisa lay in bed thinking about her situation. She had spent years exploring the galaxy in service to Earth and humanity. But she had never felt as useful or content as she did working on this simple ranch and talking with a lonely 8-year-old girl. Maybe it was time to stop running toward the next mission and start building something that would last. Maybe home was not a place you discovered, but a place you chose to stay. The day started like any other, with Lisa checking the irrigation systems before the morning heat became too intense. Katie had developed a habit of following her around the ranch, asking endless questions about how everything worked. Lisa enjoyed the company and found the girl's curiosity refreshing. "Why do the pumps make that humming sound?" Katie asked as they walked between the fields. "The electric motors create vibrations when they spin," Lisa explained. "The humming tells us they are working properly. If the sound changes, it usually means something needs attention." Katie nodded seriously, as if storing this information for future use. She had become Lisa's unofficial apprentice over the past month, absorbing every piece of knowledge offered to her. Peter joked that his daughter was getting a better education in the workshop than she would in any formal school. They were heading back to the main house for lunch when Katie spotted something moving in the tall grass near the creek. Her face lit up with excitement as she ran toward it, calling back to Lisa. "Look, there is a baby bird that fell from its nest. We have to help it." Lisa followed more carefully, knowing that wild animals could be unpredictable. She found Katie kneeling beside a small creature that was clearly injured. One of its wings hung at an odd angle and it made weak chirping sounds. "Can we fix it?" Katie asked, looking up at Lisa with hopeful eyes. Lisa knelt down beside the bird and examined it gently. The wing was broken, but the injury looked recent. With proper care, the creature might survive and even fly again. She had treated worse injuries on various alien worlds during her exploration missions. "We can try," Lisa said, "but we need to be very careful and very gentle." They fashioned a small splint from twigs and cloth torn from Lisa's shirt. The bird struggled at first, but seemed to understand they were trying to help. Katie held it carefully while Lisa wrapped the injured wing. "There," Lisa said when they finished. "Now we need to make a safe place for it to rest while the wing heals." They found a small wooden box in one of the storage sheds and lined it with soft grass. Katie wanted to take the bird to her room, but Lisa explained it would be happier outside, where it could hear other birds and feel the natural air. They set up the makeshift hospital under a shaded area near the workshop. Katie insisted on checking on the patient every few hours to make sure it had enough water and the tiny pieces of bread she had saved from breakfast. "Do you think it will be able to fly again?" she asked during one of their visits. "I think it has a good chance," Lisa replied. "Birds are tougher than they look, and this one seems to have a strong will to live." 3 days later, their patient was noticeably stronger. The bird could stand on its own, and its eyes were bright and alert. Katie was thrilled with the progress and spent even more time sitting beside the box, talking softly to their feathered friend. On the 4th day, disaster struck. Katie was playing near the creek when she slipped on the muddy bank and fell hard against a sharp rock. Lisa heard the scream from across the ranch and ran toward the sound faster than she had ever moved in her life. She found Katie sitting in the shallow water, crying and holding her leg. Blood seeped between her fingers from a deep gash just below her knee. The cut was long and jagged from where the rock had torn through her skin. "It hurts so much," Katie sobbed as Lisa lifted her from the water. "I was just trying to get closer, to see if there were any more baby birds." Lisa carried the girl back to the house, moving as quickly as she could without causing more pain. Her training kicked in automatically as she assessed the injury. The cut was serious but did not appear to have damaged any major blood vessels. It would need cleaning and stitching, but Katie would be fine. Helen was visiting her sister again, and Peter was in the far fields checking cattle. Lisa was on her own to handle the medical emergency. She set Katie down on the kitchen table and gathered supplies from the first aid kit. "This is going to hurt a little," Lisa warned as she cleaned the wound with antiseptic. "But I need to make sure no dirt got inside the cut." Katie gripped the edge of the table and tried to be brave, but tears rolled down her cheeks. Lisa worked as gently as possible, removing debris and checking for any damage to the underlying muscle. The cut was clean and would heal well with proper care. "You are being very brave," Lisa said as she prepared the medical thread. "Much braver than many adults I have known." "Will it leave a scar?" Katie asked through her tears. "Probably a small one," Lisa replied honestly. "But scars just show that we have lived interesting lives and survived to tell the story." She began stitching the wound using techniques learned during her military training. Her hands were steady, and sure as she drew the edges of the cut together. Katie watched with fascination despite the pain. "You are really good at this," Katie observed. "Almost like a real doctor." "I have had to patch up cuts and injuries before," Lisa said carefully. "When you travel a lot, you learn basic medical skills." When the last stitch was in place, Lisa bandaged the leg properly and gave Katie something for the pain. She carried the girl to her bedroom and tucked her in with strict instructions to rest and keep the leg elevated. Katie looked up at her with complete trust and gratitude. Her small hand reached out and grasped Lisa's fingers tightly. The words that came next were barely a whisper, but they hit Lisa like a physical blow. "Thank you, Mama." Lisa felt her breath catch in her throat. The simple word contained more emotion and meaning than any medal or commendation she had ever received. This child was offering her the most precious gift possible: complete acceptance and unconditional love. Tears filled Lisa's eyes as she squeezed Katie's hand gently. "You are very welcome, sweetheart. Now get some rest and let that leg heal." Katie smiled and closed her eyes, still holding onto Lisa's hand. Within minutes, she was sleeping peacefully, despite the pain medication. Lisa sat beside the bed for a long time, just watching the girl breathe and trying to process what had just happened. Helen returned an hour later and found Lisa still sitting by Katie's bedside. She took one look at the bandaged leg and Lisa's emotional expression and understood immediately what had occurred. "She called you Mama, didn't she?" Helen said softly. Lisa nodded, unable to speak. Helen sat down in the other chair and looked at the sleeping child with gentle eyes. "She has been waiting for the right person to fill that empty space in her heart," Helen whispered. "I think she finally found her." That night, Lisa lay awake, staring at the ceiling and thinking about everything that had changed with one simple word. She had spent years exploring the galaxy in search of new worlds and alien civilizations, but the most important discovery of her life had just happened in a small bedroom on a quiet ranch. She was no longer just Lisa Kane, the explorer. She was Mama to a little girl who needed her more than the stars ever had. The weeks following Katie's accident brought changes that Lisa had not expected. The girl recovered quickly from her injury, but her attachment to Lisa grew even stronger. She followed her everywhere, asking to help with repairs and maintenance. "Work around the ranch? Can I hold the wrench while you fix this?" Katie would ask. Or, "What does that part do and why did it break?" Lisa found herself explaining complex mechanical principles in simple terms that an 8-year-old could understand. Katie absorbed everything with remarkable intelligence and seemed to have a natural gift for understanding how machines worked. Peter noticed the change in his daughter immediately. "She has not been this engaged with anything since her mother died," he told Lisa one evening. "Whatever you are doing, it is working miracles." Lisa felt a warm glow at the praise, but also a growing weight of responsibility. This child was depending on her more each day, and the thought of disappointing her was almost unbearable. She began to worry about what would happen when the time came to leave the ranch. Helen had fully accepted Lisa's role in Katie's life and seemed relieved to have help with the girl's care. "She needs a mother figure," Helen explained. "I have tried my best, but Katie never connected with me the way she has with you." The three women settled into a comfortable routine with Helen handling the household duties while Lisa took charge of Katie's education and emotional needs. Peter watched it all with satisfaction, seeing his family finally healing from their loss. But Lisa's past was not as buried as she had hoped. Her advanced knowledge of technology was becoming harder to hide as she tackled more complex repairs around the ranch. When the main communications array broke down, she had it working again in half the time the local technicians would have needed. "That was some impressive work," Peter said as he watched her pack away her tools. "Where exactly did you learn to work with communication equipment?" Lisa felt heat rise in her cheeks. You pick up a lot of different skills when you travel between worlds. Communication gear is pretty much the same everywhere. Peter nodded, but she could see questions forming in his eyes. Her cover story was wearing thin, and she would need to be more careful about revealing her true expertise. The problem was that Lisa genuinely wanted to help improve life on the ranch. When she saw inefficient systems or outdated equipment, her instincts told her to fix them. But each improvement raised more questions about her background and training. "You know things that most traders would never learn," Helen observed one day. "Sometimes you sound more like an engineer or a scientist than someone who just hauls cargo between planets." Lisa tried to deflect with humor. "Maybe I should have been an engineer. I certainly seem to have a knack for fixing things." But the questions kept coming, and Lisa found herself walking a careful line between being helpful and revealing too much. She began limiting her repairs to basic maintenance that any skilled mechanic might handle. The situation became more complicated. When news arrived from the outer settlements, pirate raids were increasing across the planet as organized gangs targeted isolated farms and ranches. The colonial government's small defense force was stretched too thin to provide adequate protection. 3 more ranches hit this week, Peter announced at dinner after returning from a meeting in town. The Morrison family over in Sunset Valley lost everything, burned out completely. Lisa felt a chill run down her spine. The pirates were getting bolder and coming closer to Stone Creek Ranch. She recognized the pattern from intelligence reports she had studied during her military service. This was not random raiding, but a systematic campaign to control territory. "What kind of weapons do these pirates have?" she asked, trying to sound casually concerned. "Military-grade equipment from what folks are saying," Peter replied grimly. "Body armor and energy weapons that our hunting rifles cannot match. They hit fast and disappear before anyone can organize a response." Katie looked up from her plate with frightened eyes. "Are the bad men going to come here?" Peter reached over and patted her hand reassuringly. "We are a long way from where they have been operating, sweetheart. And we have good security around the ranch." But Lisa could see the worry in his face. Stone Creek Ranch was large and prosperous, which would make it an attractive target. The ranch hands were brave, but they were farmers, not soldiers. Against trained pirates with advanced weapons, they would not stand much of a chance. That night, Lisa lay awake thinking about the growing threat. Her military instincts were screaming warnings about the tactical situation. The pirates were systematically eliminating resistance and gaining control of larger territories with each successful raid. She found herself analyzing defensive positions around the ranch and calculating response times for various scenarios. The old training was still there, buried under months of peaceful farm life, but ready to emerge when needed. "You are thinking like a soldier again," she whispered to herself in the darkness. "These people do not know what you really are, and they do not need to get involved in your war." But it was not her war anymore. This was about protecting Katie and the family that had given her a home. If pirates threatened the ranch, they would be threatening everything that mattered to her now. The next morning brought more bad news. The settlement of Green Hills had been attacked during the night. 17 people were dead and the town was completely destroyed. The pirates were moving closer and growing more violent with each raid. "We need to start organizing some kind of defense," Peter told the assembled ranch hands. "I am not going to sit here waiting for them to show up at our door." Lisa listened to the discussion with growing frustration. These good people were talking about forming militia units and patrol schedules, but they had no real understanding of military tactics or strategy. Their bravery would not be enough against experienced raiders. "What kind of defensive measures are you planning?" she asked during a break in the conversation. Peter shrugged. "Post guards around the perimeter. Set up communication points between the buildings. Basic stuff to give us early warning if trouble comes." Lisa bit her tongue to keep from pointing out the flaws in his thinking. Passive defenses would not work against mobile attackers with superior firepower. But she could not offer better alternatives, without revealing knowledge that a simple trader should not possess. That evening, Katie found her sitting on the porch staring out at the darkening sky. The girl climbed into Lisa's lap and snuggled against her chest. "You look worried, Mama," Katie said, using the name that had become natural between them. "Are you scared about the bad men too?" Lisa wrapped her arms around the child and held her close. I am not going to let anything happen to you or your family. That is a promise. Katie looked up at her with complete trust. I know you will protect us. You can fix anything. If only it were that simple, Lisa thought. But some problems could not be solved with tools and technical knowledge. Some threats required skills she had hoped never to use again. The attack came 3 days later in the darkest hour before dawn when most people were sleeping deepest. Lisa woke to the sound of aircraft engines and knew immediately that their peaceful world was about to end. She rolled out of bed and moved, to the window staying low to avoid being seen. 3 ships hovered over the ranch buildings with searchlights cutting through the darkness. These were not the crude vessels she had expected, but military-grade assault craft with heavy weapons, mounted on their hulls. This is not a random raid, Lisa whispered to herself. This is a professional military operation. Alarms began sounding throughout the ranch as the night guards spotted the incoming threat. Lisa heard Peter's voice over the communication system, telling everyone to get to the reinforced shelters they had prepared. But she knew those shelters would not protect anyone if the pirates decided to use their heavy weapons. Lisa grabbed her clothes and dressed quickly. Every instinct told her to get Katie and the family to safety before the shooting started. But, as she moved toward the door, explosions began erupting around the ranch buildings. The pirates were not interested in taking prisoners or negotiating. They had come to destroy everything and kill anyone who resisted. Energy beams lanced down from the hovering ship, setting fires and blasting holes in walls and roofs. Lisa ran through the house calling for the Morrison family. She found Peter trying to organize the defense, while Helen gathered supplies for the shelters. Katie was hiding under her bed, crying in terror as the sounds of battle grew louder outside. We need to get to the underground shelter, Peter shouted over the noise. The main house is going to be a target. Lisa scooped Katie into her arms and followed the family through passages that led to a reinforced bunker beneath the ranch buildings. Other families from the settlement were already there, along with some of the ranch hands who had escaped the initial attack. How many ships? Lisa asked Jake, who was monitoring the radio communications. 3 assault craft plus ground troops, he replied grimly. They landed about 50 men with full combat gear. Our people are falling back to defensive positions, but we are outgunned. Through the shelter's periscope, Lisa could see the tactical situation developing outside. The pirates had established a perimeter around the main buildings and were systematically clearing resistance. Their equipment and tactics were military standard, which meant these were not simple raiders but professional soldiers. Katie clung to her desperately as explosions shook the shelter. Make them stop, Mama, please make them stop. Lisa felt something snap inside her chest. This child was terrified and in danger because violent men had decided to attack innocent people. Her family was under threat and the people she cared about were being hunted by trained killers. Peter, I need you to keep everyone in this shelter no matter what happens, Lisa said in a voice that suddenly carried unmistakable authority. Do not come out until I give the all-clear signal. Peter looked at her with surprise. What are you planning to do? You cannot go out there alone. Lisa was already moving toward the shelter exit. I am going to end this before anyone else gets hurt. She climbed out of the bunker and moved through the ranch buildings using routes she had memorized during her weeks of working there. The tactical part of her mind was fully engaged now, analyzing enemy positions and planning her approach. Lisa reached the workshop where her tools were stored and quickly assembled what she needed. The plasma cutter could be modified into a weapon with the right adjustments. Other equipment could be repurposed for combat use by someone who understood the underlying technology. The first pirate team never knew what hit them. Lisa moved through, the darkness like a ghost appearing behind their positions and eliminating threats with surgical precision. Her years of military training came flooding back, as if she had never left the service. The second team lasted longer because they realized they were facing someone with professional skills. But Lisa knew their equipment and tactics better than they did. She had fought against pirates before and understood how they thought and moved. By the time the assault ships realized their ground teams were being systematically destroyed, Lisa had already reached the main communications array. A few modifications to the antenna and power systems turned it into a jamming device that blinded their sensors and navigation systems. The ships tried to compensate by landing and deploying their remaining troops. This was exactly what Lisa had been waiting for. On the ground, they lost their mobility advantage and became vulnerable to someone who knew how to exploit their weaknesses. The final phase of the battle lasted less than 20 minutes. When the shooting stopped, 12 pirates were dead and the rest were fleeing in their damaged ships. Lisa stood in the middle of the ranch yard holding a captured energy rifle and breathing hard from the adrenaline. Peter and the others emerged from the shelter to find the threat eliminated and their mysterious ranch hand standing calmly among the wreckage. The woman they thought they knew had just single-handedly defeated a military assault force. "Who are you really?" Peter asked in a voice filled with awe and suspicion. Lisa looked around at the faces staring at her and realized there was no point in maintaining her cover story any longer. "My name is Captain Lisa Kane of the Earth Navy Deep Space Command. I was on a classified exploration mission when pirates destroyed my ship." The silence stretched for long seconds as everyone processed this revelation. Then Katie broke away from Helen and ran to Lisa, throwing her small arms around her waist. "I do not care what your job used to be," Katie said fiercely. "You are still my mama and you saved us." Lisa knelt down and held the girl close, feeling tears run down her cheeks. "Yes, sweetheart. I am still your mama. That is the most important job I have ever had." Peter stepped forward and extended his hand. "Captain Kane, thank you for protecting our family. Your secret is safe with us if you want it to be." Lisa shook his hand gratefully. "The secret part of my life is over. If you will still have me, I would like to stay here and help protect this place." Helen smiled through her own tears. "This is your home now. We would not dream of letting you leave." As the suns rose over Stone Creek Ranch, Lisa looked around at the damage from the battle. It would take time to rebuild, but they had survived. More importantly, they had proven that organized resistance could defeat the pirates. Word of the victory would spread to other settlements and ranches. The organized campaign of terror was about to become much more difficult for the raiders to continue, and Lisa had found something worth fighting for that was more important than any mission she had ever undertaken. Katie tugged on her sleeve and pointed up at the morning sky where the 3 moons were still visible. "Will you still teach me about the stars, Mama?" Lisa smiled and lifted the girl into her arms. "Every night if you want. We have all the time in the world now." The attack came 3 days later in the darkest hour before dawn when most people were sleeping deepest. Lisa woke to the sound of aircraft engines and knew immediately that their peaceful world was about to end. She rolled out of bed and moved to the window, staying low to avoid being seen. 3 ships hovered over the ranch buildings with searchlights cutting through the darkness. These were not the crude vessels she had expected, but military-grade assault craft with heavy weapons mounted on their hulls. "This is not a random raid," Lisa whispered to herself. "This is a professional military operation." Alarms began sounding throughout the ranch as the night guards spotted the incoming threat. Lisa heard Peter's voice over the communication system, telling everyone to get to the reinforced shelters they had prepared. But she knew those shelters would not protect anyone if the pirates decided to use their heavy weapons. Lisa grabbed her clothes and dressed quickly. Every instinct told her to get Katie and the family to safety before the shooting started. But as she moved toward the door, explosions began erupting around the ranch buildings. The pirates were not interested in taking prisoners or negotiating. They had come to destroy everything and kill anyone who resisted. Energy beams lanced down from the hovering ship, setting fires and blasting holes in walls and roofs. Lisa ran through the house calling for the Morrison family. She found Peter trying to organize the defense, while Helen gathered supplies for the shelters. Katie was hiding under her bed, crying in terror as the sounds of battle grew louder outside. "We need to get to the underground shelter," Peter shouted over the noise. "The main house is going to be a target." Lisa scooped Katie into her arms and followed the family through passages that led to a reinforced bunker beneath the ranch buildings. Other families from the settlement were already there, along with some of the ranch hands who had escaped the initial attack. "How many ships?" Lisa asked Jake, who was monitoring the radio communications. 3 assault craft plus ground troops," he replied grimly. They landed about 50 men with full combat gear. Our people are falling back to defensive positions, but we are outgunned. Through the shelter's periscope, Lisa could see the tactical situation developing outside. The pirates had established a perimeter around the main buildings and were systematically clearing resistance. Their equipment and tactics were military standard, which meant these were not simple raiders but professional soldiers. Katie clung to her desperately as explosions shook the shelter. "Make them stop, Mama, please make them stop." Lisa felt something snap inside her chest. This child was terrified and in danger because violent men had decided to attack innocent people. Her family was under threat and the people she cared about were being hunted by trained killers. "Peter, I need you to keep everyone in this shelter no matter what happens," Lisa said in a voice that suddenly carried unmistakable authority. "Do not come out until I give the all-clear signal." Peter looked at her with surprise. "What are you planning to do? You cannot go out there alone." Lisa was already moving toward the shelter exit. "I am going to end this before anyone else gets hurt." She climbed out of the bunker and moved through the ranch buildings using routes she had memorized during her weeks of working there. The tactical part of her mind was fully engaged now, analyzing enemy positions and planning her approach. Lisa reached the workshop where her tools were stored and quickly assembled what she needed. The plasma cutter could be modified into a weapon with the right adjustments. Other equipment could be repurposed for combat use by someone who understood the underlying technology. The first pirate team never knew what hit them. Lisa moved through, the darkness like a ghost appearing behind their positions and eliminating threats with surgical precision. Her years of military training came flooding back, as if she had never left the service. The second team lasted longer because they realized they were facing someone with professional skills. But Lisa knew their equipment and tactics better than they did. She had fought against pirates before and understood how they thought and moved. By the time the assault ships realized their ground teams were being systematically destroyed, Lisa had already reached the main communications array. A few modifications to the antenna and power systems turned it into a jamming device that blinded their sensors and navigation systems. The ships tried to compensate by landing and deploying their remaining troops. This was exactly what Lisa had been waiting for. On the ground, they lost their mobility advantage and became vulnerable to someone who knew how to exploit their weaknesses. The final phase of the battle lasted less than 20 minutes. When the shooting stopped, 12 pirates were dead and the rest were fleeing in their damaged ships. Lisa stood in the middle of the ranch yard holding a captured energy rifle and breathing hard from the adrenaline. Peter and the others emerged from the shelter to find the threat eliminated and their mysterious ranch hand standing calmly among the wreckage. The woman they thought they knew had just single-handedly defeated a military assault force. "Who are you really?" Peter asked in a voice filled with awe and suspicion. Lisa looked around at the faces staring at her and realized there was no point in maintaining her cover story any longer. "My name is Captain Lisa Kane of the Earth Navy Deep Space Command. I was on a classified exploration mission when pirates destroyed my ship." The silence stretched for long seconds as everyone processed this revelation. Then Katie broke away from Helen and ran to Lisa, throwing her small arms around her waist. "I do not care what your job used to be," Katie said fiercely. "You are still my mama and you saved us." Lisa knelt down and held the girl close, feeling tears run down her cheeks. "Yes, sweetheart. I am still your mama. That is the most important job I have ever had." Peter stepped forward and extended his hand. "Captain Kane, thank you for protecting our family. Your secret is safe with us if you want it to be." Lisa shook his hand gratefully. "The secret part of my life is over. If you will still have me, I would like to stay here and help protect this place." Helen smiled through her own tears. "This is your home now. We would not dream of letting you leave." As the suns rose over Stone Creek Ranch, Lisa looked around at the damage from the battle. It would take time to rebuild, but they had survived. More importantly, they had proven that organized resistance could defeat the pirates. Word of the victory would spread to other settlements and ranches. The organized campaign of terror was about to become much more difficult for the raiders to continue, and Lisa had found something worth fighting for that was more important than any mission she had ever undertaken. Katie tugged on her sleeve and pointed up at the morning sky where the 3 moons were still visible. Will you still teach me about the stars, Mama? Lisa smiled and lifted the girl into her arms. Every night if you want. We have all the time in the world now. 6 months after the Navy shuttle departed, Lisa stood on the front porch of the Morrison house watching Katie practice her reading under the shade of a large tree. The girl had grown noticeably taller and more confident since their first meeting. Her laughter rang out across the ranch yard as she struggled with a particularly difficult word. Mama, this word is too hard, Katie called out, holding up her book. What does exploration mean? Lisa walked over and sat down beside her daughter, on the grass. The word daughter still felt new and wonderful every time she thought it. The adoption papers had been finalized 2 months earlier, making their relationship official in the eyes of the law. Exploration means going to new places to learn about them, Lisa explained. Like when we walk to the far pastures to check on the cattle. We are exploring parts of the ranch we do not visit very often. Katie nodded thoughtfully. Have you ever done any big exploring? Like to places really far away? Lisa smiled at the innocent question. Katie still did not fully understand her mother's background, but she was beginning to piece together clues from their conversations about space and technology. I have traveled to some distant places, Lisa admitted carefully, but none of them were as beautiful or as important as this ranch. Tell me about the farthest place you ever went, Katie said, settling in for what she hoped would be a good story. Lisa looked up at the afternoon sky where the 3 moons were faintly visible despite the daylight. I once visited a world where the entire surface was covered by cities that reached up into the clouds. Billions of people lived there in towers of glass and metal. Katie's eyes grew wide with wonder. Were there any children there? Oh yes, lots of children. But they never got to run through grass or take care of animals or watch real stars at night. Everything was artificial and controlled. That sounds lonely, Katie said with the wisdom that sometimes surprised Lisa. I am glad you came here instead of staying in those cloud cities. So am I, sweetheart. So am I. Their conversation was interrupted by the sound of approaching vehicles. A convoy of trucks and transports was heading toward the ranch carrying families and equipment from the outer settlements. This had become a regular occurrence as people moved closer to Stone Creek Ranch for protection and community. Peter emerged from the main house to greet the new arrivals. Over the past months, he had become the unofficial leader of the growing settlement that surrounded the original ranch. Lisa's military expertise combined with his natural leadership abilities had created something unique on Haven's Rest. More refugees from the Patterson Valley, Peter announced as the vehicle stopped in the ranch yard. Pirates hit them 3 days ago, but our early warning system gave them time to evacuate. Lisa nodded with satisfaction. The communication network she had helped design was working exactly as intended. Instead of being caught by surprise, isolated communities now had advance warning of pirate movements. More importantly, they had safe places to retreat when attack seemed imminent. How many families this time, she asked. 15 with about 40 people total, Peter replied. We can house them in the new dormitories until they decide whether to stay permanently or try to rebuild elsewhere. Lisa watched the families unload their possessions and felt a familiar sense of pride in what they had accomplished. Stone Creek Ranch had evolved from a simple farming operation into a fortress community that provided safety and hope for hundreds of people. The transformation had not been easy. Building defensive positions and expanding housing required enormous amounts of work and resources, but the growing population provided its own labor force, and each new family brought skills and knowledge that benefited everyone. Mama, look, Katie said, pointing toward the main gate. More people are coming, but these ones look different. Lisa turned to see a small group approaching on foot rather than in vehicles. Their clothes and equipment marked them as travelers from the core worlds rather than local settlers. Something about their formation and alertness suggested military training. Peter, we may have visitors who are not refugees, Lisa called out. These people look like they might be official representatives of some kind. The group consisted of 4 individuals led by a woman in colonial administration uniform. She approached Peter and Lisa with the confident bearing of someone accustomed to authority and respect. "I am Director Sarah Williams from the Colonial Defense Authority," she announced formally. "I am here to speak with Captain Lisa Kane about establishing a formal defense agreement for this sector." Lisa stepped forward, wondering how much the colonial government knew about her activities. "I am Lisa Kane, but I am no longer a captain. I resigned from active duty and I am a civilian now." Williams smiled slightly. "Your former rank is less important than your current accomplishments. The defense network you have created here is exactly what this colony needs to survive the pirate threat." She gestured toward the ranch buildings and defensive positions that were visible throughout the settlement. "In 6 months you have built something that our military advisors said would take years to accomplish. The colonial government wants to make this arrangement official." Peter looked between Lisa and the director with interest. "What kind of arrangement are you proposing?" "Full recognition as the regional defense coordinator with authority to organize militia units and coordinate military responses," Williams explained, "along with funding and equipment to expand your operations to cover the entire planet." Lisa felt Katie's small hand slip into hers as the girl sensed the importance of the conversation. This was an opportunity to protect not just their community, but everyone on Haven's Rest. It was also a chance to use her skills for something that truly mattered. "What would be required of me personally?" Lisa asked. "Mainly what you are already doing," Williams replied. "Training local forces, establishing defensive positions, and coordinating responses to pirate attacks. The difference would be official authority and substantial resources to work with." Lisa looked down at Katie, who was watching the adults with serious eyes. "What do you think, sweetheart? Should Mama take on this big responsibility?" Katie considered the question with the careful thought she applied to all important matters. "Will it help keep all the families safe?" "Yes, it will help protect everyone, including families we have not met yet." "Then you should do it," Katie said, firmly. "That is what mamas are supposed to do, protect their children." Lisa felt her heart swell with love and pride for this remarkable little girl who understood so much about duty and caring for others. "You are absolutely right. Protecting our family means protecting everyone." She turned back to Director Williams and extended her hand. "I accept the position. When do we start?" The ceremony took place a week later in the main hall of the expanded community center. Representatives from settlements across Haven's Rest gathered to witness Lisa's official appointment as Regional Defense Coordinator. Katie sat in the front row wearing her best dress and beaming with pride. "Do you solemnly swear to use your authority and resources to protect the citizens of Haven's Rest from all threats, foreign and domestic?" the colonial magistrate asked. "I do," Lisa replied firmly. "Then by the authority vested in me by the colonial government, I hereby commission you as Regional Defense Coordinator with all the rights and responsibilities thereof." The audience erupted in applause as Lisa accepted the ceremonial badge of office. But her eyes were on Katie, who was clapping enthusiastically and mouthing the word "Mama" with obvious joy. That evening, Lisa and Katie sat on their favorite spot on the porch looking up at the star-filled sky. The 3 moons cast silver light across the ranch buildings and the surrounding settlement that had become their world. "Mama," Katie said thoughtfully, "do you ever miss flying among those stars?" Lisa pulled her daughter closer and pointed toward a particularly bright constellation. "I spent years traveling between those distant suns looking for something important, but I never found it out there." "What were you looking for?" Katie asked. "I was looking for home," Lisa replied softly. "I was looking for family. I was looking for a reason to stop wandering and start building something that would last." Katie snuggled against her mother's side and yawned sleepily. "Did you find it?" Lisa kissed the top of Katie's head and smiled. "Yes, sweetheart. I found everything I was looking for right here. And the best part is that it found me too." Above them, the stars wheeled in their ancient patterns across the vast sky. But Lisa no longer felt the pull of distant worlds or the loneliness of endless space. She had discovered that the greatest adventures happen not among the stars, but in the simple daily joy of watching a child grow and learn and laugh. The universe was vast and full of wonders, But home was right here in this moment with Katie's warm weight against her side and the sound of their community settling into peaceful sleep around them. Lisa Kane had explored the galaxy and found her heart's true destination in the love of one small girl who had looked at her and said, "Mama." The stars would always be there waiting in the darkness, but now they served as a reminder of how far she had traveled to find her way home.